Greetings, mechanics, and welcome back to the world of Dappershire in, of course, Scrap Mechanic. Now, in this episode, unlike the last two, we're going to be working on something a little bit more base-focused. It'll be a mixture of just building up the base and also adding a couple of functional components to the base. I've got a couple of ideas. I have received numerous awesome suggestions in the comments of things that I can add, and one of them I've just implemented. Let's see how it works, shall we? Little ramp here to try and help me up over this and avoid smacking my head when I'm climbing up here. I think it worked quite well. Oh, wonderful. I like it. We'll keep this. I'm not sure if it'll stop me cracking my head open, of course, but regardless, it looks pretty awesome. I think we can all agree. Now, it's going to be a bit of a mixture of just building and actually adding functional components. Like I said, I've got a lot of suggestions. I think the first thing we're going to start with, though, is actually a bit of a scissor lift. Now, I'm going to have to try and plan out where I want this scissor lift, because I actually haven't added too much room back here. In fact, I think what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to change the shape of our garage. So I'm going to go ahead and start building up walls, adding a few embellishments here and there, and just getting things ready for us to build a scissor lift up to the first level, or maybe even the roof of the garage. I mean, I'm thinking we'll have this first level of the garage be quite lofty in order to accommodate large vehicles. So I shall bring you back when that's done. Yes, if you're sat there thinking, really, is Avac really going to be annoyed because those I-beams don't have the same pattern in them? You'd be right. Yes, I will be really annoyed. It is going to rot my brain. You've no idea. I'm stuck. Stupid thing. However, I know how to cheat life, so it's all good. Haha! Didn't expect me to have advanced teleportation technology, did you? No, of course you didn't. I also can't talk for some reason. Don't know why, but there we are. Okay, I think I'm ready to begin work on the scissor lift at this stage. As you can see, I've added, I think, quite a lot of character to the garage so far. There's still something that I need to do over here. I'm not quite sure yet. Probably a sign. I don't want everything to be jam-packed full of props, because you can make a scene too busy. It's much like art. There's a point where you need to say, okay, I've finished. I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve. I've added some pipes, some canisters. I've even added a little outdoors plumbing over here. Little place for the mechanic to wash his oil-stained hands when he's done working on all of his building. Over here, we've got the seesaw. That is definitely going to be a permanent fixture out here. And in fact, maybe I should, because of that, move the control around, or maybe even hide it, since the only thing I really do with the control is just disconnect it. I've added some more pipes out here going into the air conditioning. Now, I realized that doesn't make sense. Actually, it would be better if it was mechanical pipes. But I'd like to think that's some sort of ventilation pipe, maybe pumping very cold air from some sort of underground facility. Over here, we definitely need to do more. Like the walls, they're way too plain. We need something to give it a little bit more character. But at least the shape itself is adding a little bit to it. I like these little parts here. But it is time now. as I mentioned, to work on the scissor lift. So I'm just going to get a few things moved out of the way. In fact, I'm going to move the vehicle out of the way first, and then when we come back, we'll be working on the scissor lift. So see you in a moment. Okay then, now for the scissor lift we're going to need to do a few things. First and foremost, I want to create a little area down here. I'm not sure if we're going to be using an X or switch to control the scissor lift itself. We could do something like that. We could have a button at the top, button at the bottom. It seems to make sense. So I'll just prepare that area ready to set up the X or switch. But for now, we're not going to really need that. What we need is the actual lift itself. Now, I'm going to be using some props for this, but not a lot of props. Generally, as I've mentioned in I believe the last episode actually, there are certain things that work better with props and certain things that work better with blocks. And any kind of friction surface, any kind of interaction, for example, if there was a bearing there, then I would want the blocks on either side of the bearing to actually be building blocks rather than props. And what I mean by blocks and props is these are blocks, these are basically building blocks, think of them as your basic cuboid, and then everything else has an actual model to it with collision areas, hitboxes, that sort of thing. And that's what I'm trying to avoid messing with too much. Now, to make our scissor lift, let's think. If we're going to have it about this large, and that gives us a little bit of room to work in. Now, I actually want to build a scissor lift. It would be very easy to just have extending arms, 1, 2, 3, going along here, and that would actually give us a reasonable amount of height. But I want to make something that's, well, a little bit more true to the idea of a scissor lift. Now, I'm not entirely certain on what a scissor lift is. I mean, the principle of how they work, fairly obvious to me, but there are certain things that we're not going to be able to do in Scrap Mechanic that you might associate with a scissor lift. So we're possibly going to have to be a little bit creative in the way that we get this to look. But one of the things that I'm really, really certain on is I don't want it to just be a chain of limbs that all extend. I want them to be stacked on top of each other. So that is going to add a few layers of extra complexity to this build, but I don't think it's anything that is beyond us, thankfully. Where do I want to put this? You know what, I could kind of tuck this back here if I really wanted to. And I kind of like the idea of having the control system just sort of neatly set in this little area back there. And in fact, we can even make it look like it belongs by dropping down some wires as well, and I'd actually quite like that. So let's go ahead, pop that in there. So there are our wires controlling this, and we'll in fact go as far as to do this as well. Yeah, that actually looks now like it is part of the build, and that pleases me more than I would like to admit, honestly. Now, right, we want this one to start aiming up. So number 2, we're going to want you to begin life pointing up by, let's say, about 10 degrees, I'm going to say. I think 10 degrees would be a good start. So we need it counterclockwise by 10 degrees. Now, you might be wondering how you're going to get 10 degrees when you can only go in increments of 15. You can actually hold down Shift, and then you have point-by-point control over the angle. So there we go. That's nice and adjusted. Now, I want to see if that's going to be enough. Will this have clearance? This is the really big question, because if not, then I am going to need to go by 15 degrees instead. We'll see. Let's see. If I pop that there, can I build you? Ooh. Ooh, I think we can. Oh, this is glorious. Okay. Now, I want you to be going the other way. There we are. And we want you... sorry, not counterclockwise, but rotated counter to the one before it by 10 degrees, and that should even it out. We should have a nice, even surface. So these will be neatly stacked above each other. They'll still be rising, but obviously, I mean, I can't have things existing in the same space at the same time. That would break physics. Although this game does seem to enjoy breaking physics where it can. Now we want this counterclockwise by 10, and we're just going to continue this effect for a little while. Now, if we actually stacked this as high as we want the lift to exist, That would actually give us an awful lot of height on this scissor lift. Probably a bit more than I'm really looking for, I'll be honest with you. Also, you know what, I'm stood here. Why don't I just go ahead and add some more embellishments? Damn it. I like adding embellishments. Ah, no, I need those brownies. I like adding embellishments. What can I say? We are going to place... Can you please stop that there? Now, be aware, there are some funky things that happen when you start moving, playing around with shift on the controls. Is it seems to remember every time you've pressed shift as you trying to run, and then doesn't realize that you didn't actually try to run, that you were in the controls. So you come out of there and you're moving like a bajillion miles an hour. Just hit shift and you'll come out of auto run. Because right now I'm in auto run, basically. If I hold down shift to run normally, the moment I release shift, it slows me back down again. So, I mean, you might like moving that fast. You speed demons, you. Right, let's pop this one in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to hook all of this up, and then I'll get to actually creating a lift platform. So I shall see you back in a few moments. Okay, we have our lift more or less stable at this point. It is relatively flush with that area up there. I actually built out the size of the lift just to compare it against the sides. It's pretty tall, honestly. I think tall enough that we can have the next level up there. It does mean that the trike is about as tall of a vehicle as we're really realistically going to be able to fit into this area. But at this point, it is now time for me to actually make a lift on this. Just for the curious, though, we've got 4 limbs in total, and we are rising. Let's just quickly calculate this. It's rising from this level, so we are about, let's draw something out to connect. So that's 1 above, so we're there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We are rising exactly 20 blocks. And if you were to build a lift of these exact proportions trying to rise the exact same height, then these are the angles that you would need. There was a little bit of experimentation involved in here. Honestly, this is the part that I actually got wrong the most. I do feel a little bit derpy because it's literally this angle made in 2 steps. The less said about that, the better I'm going to feel about myself. So I'm going to go ahead and start building out this lift. Let's see what we can make. Alas, we cannot have that component in there. I thought I was pushing my luck a little bit. It seems I was. But still, yes, I went to the effort of adding this in and actually reprogramming everything in there just so that I could have this in there. Because, I mean, come on, it's all about the embellishments, really, at the end of the day. If you can't have a little fun in a game like this, where on earth can you have fun? Now then, we've already got a switch on here, and I'm thinking that we are probably going to set up 2 XOR gates. It's a little bit more complicated than I was originally intending, and it's probably going to take the remainder of this episode, if I'm perfectly honest. And I do apologize about that. I had hoped that I might be able to do a little bit more work, but I would really, really quite like to set this up. Now, I'm just looking for a last little bit of something to do on the lift, and I think it's probably going to involve, you know what, maybe it's more going to involve something like this. We'll bring these down. We'll have a quick look at what we can do. Much as I have set the step to drop, I kind of want this to open as well. So let's pop down a quick bearing there, and we'll do this on camera, as it were. We will have this there. Now the problem is these do not the best components make for a kind of brace system. Still, you know what? I think the brace as well would actually look a little bit better if it were slightly sunk down. So we'll do it around here instead. Now the only issue is, and I am concerned about this one, is I'm going to be rotating this block right up next to a prop. That could have undesirable effects, I'll be perfectly honest with you. It might result in something becoming broken. We'll have to see. Also, I need to account for the fact that normally this will be open at this stage. But let's just work out how many of these I'm going to need. We would need something like this. In fact, we would need 3 of them. And then a door there. Oh, actually, we could have this open up on both sides. There's really no reason not to, thinking about it. So yeah, sure, we'll add this in. We will make this as flashy of a lift as we possibly can. Now it's not going to be a completely symmetrical design, and I know. Shh. It hurts me too. It's okay. I think it's okay. Probably is. Oh, banging right up against that. That's actually going to be kind of nasty. Okay, this plan has been foiled by the position of all of these components. That is a bit of a shame. But alright, we're just going to have to live with a really, really large gate. Unless we do something a little bit more fancy and actually have this gate fold. We can do that. That's certainly an option. Okay. Yeah, we can definitely do this. It's not exactly what I was aiming for, but I'll accept it. And we'll have this there, and then we'll have it close at the top. I'm just trying to think of how this is going to look. We would want this facing that way. So this will be our lock system. Not what I was thinking of doing. I'll be honest. Let's get everything is flying out of the way. Let's hook you up then. The last 2 parts of this lift, I fancy. Now, this is its normal state. That is open. When it's in motion, it should... First, number 8 should rotate clockwise. Yeah. Number 8 should rotate clockwise. That is actually in the wrong place. That should be facing this way. But I'll fix that in a moment. So 8 by 90 degrees. This is in motion, so that's fine. 90 degrees. And which way is this rotating? I want that to rotate clockwise by 90 degrees as well. And then simply rotate counterclockwise. Should be all fairly straightforward, honestly. Let's see if that actually works. Perfect. I love it. Okay. That's the last thing I'm going to do on this. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Let's see if that actually looks right. There we go. Lovely. Let's bring it back down again. And we can have that there, I suppose. Because it would look right. Excellent. We can also slow it down a little bit. We don't want to be catapulting off anywhere crazy. That has broken everything. Yeah, I would love it if I could have certain parts operate at different speeds. But we'll see. So there we go. Lift is coming down. Lift is down. Gate is removed. Ah, perfect. We have an amazing lift. Now I'm going to have to do all of the logic for this lift, and I'm not going to force you to sit here while I do that, so I'm going to do this off camera, and then I will talk you through what we set up, so I shall be back in a few moments. Okay, we're back, and things have changed a little bit more than I intended in your absence. Right after I'd finished setting up the two XOR switches, my ferrets woke up and wanted breakfast, so I went and got that sorted and allowed them to scamper around the room for a little bit, and I just tidied up the place whilst they were doing that. I added some blocks there, changed this whole thing to make it look a little bit more interesting, and also to cover up the really silly way it was interacting with the air conditioning. So now it kind of looks alright. We've got a few extra lights. We've got some more signs around the place. A bit of a danger of death sign there and a switch. It isn't connected to anything, but I like to leave it on to make it look like the fuse box is actually pumping power into the base. We've got our little light there. Got some pipes along here as well. A little valve. Oh, I'm actually really liking this. I even added some wiring over there, though. That sometimes causes a little bit of an oddity. Added two lights there. This limb here, I've changed the way it folds, so it's much more compact. I'll give you a quick demonstration. Now, unfortunately, it does cause the whole lift to wobble a little bit as it's turning, and there's not really a lot that I can do about that. Unless, let me think. I would have to have it operate in 2 stages, perhaps, but I might be able to make that limb work a bit better. So this would come down first, then it would rotate around. But right now, it's all happening in the same moment. I'll have a look into that, and I'll do all of that off camera. But here we are. This is what we wanted to discuss. I have gone ahead and I've set this up. And yes, I've even added some embellishments down here. I know we're never going to see it realistically, but I'll know it's there. So I want to know that it's pretty. We've even got a little valve there as well. Now, the way that we're doing this, we're using 2 XOR switches. They're not completely hooked up just yet. So I'll actually pop down a switch just for the sake of it so that I can demonstrate this system. But the idea is there will be a top floor, there will be a bottom floor. I'm not going to have 3 floors. I could, but I'd rather not. We'll have a top floor and a bottom floor, and the switches in the garage itself will be hooked up to this XOR. Now, if either one is turned on, then that's going to break, or rather trigger the sensor there, which will affect this over here. But if both are on or both are off, then the sensor isn't going to have any signal. Now, over here, we have one of the 2 components of the XOR triggered by the sensor, and the other one is triggered by the lift. Now, that will mean, in effect, that if any one of these is turned on, then the lift will operate. Let me do that. There we go. So the lift is active now. There we go. Off into the sky. However, now I turned that one on specifically because it's going to streamline us demonstrating that. one part of this XOR is active. Now, typically, this XOR, if a single one is active, it's going to break the switch, and that is going to trigger the other one. So now, effectively, this XOR has two components turned on, which means it's turning off, and this is the one that controls the lift. If this side were to have both switches turned on, then in turn, it would allow that to go back up. So you can just toggle. These are all toggling the state of the lift. It does get a little bit finicky, especially because that switch is currently on. But there we go. Everything is right. That's right. You just stay down here for now. I'm pretty happy with how this is all coming together. However, as you can probably guess, it's getting on a little bit. And I need to get this uploaded. I had meant to have this all recorded and set up well ahead of the morning, but this game does have a way of kind of eating your time up. In the next episode, we are going to continue with the base. I really want to get at least the garage completely finished before we look at other vehicles. I try to mix up what I'm doing in the episodes, but I'm really, really enjoying adding all of these little embellishments. I've got a couple of plans ready for the outside of this wall, and especially back here, the actual lift shaft. I've got quite a few plans for that I'm quite eager to show you. But that is going to be the end of the episode. So as always, I warmly welcome your feedback, especially with this episode. Actually, I would really love to know whether you particularly enjoy the base building episodes. I've had a lot of people asking for me to finish the base. I was under the impression that more people would enjoy the vehicle episodes, and that's why I tried to have them interspersed between the base building episodes. But do let me know what your preference is, and we'll see what we can do to tailor the series towards that. But that is going to be it from me. If you enjoyed the episode, then do leave a like. Lets me know that you want to see more Scrap Mechanic in the future. But until next time, do take care, everyone. That is so cool.